We're here at the Mount St. Francis Gallery, the Mary Anderson Center for the Arts. It's a beautiful place up here. A lot of people hike. It's about 400 acres, the campus. We're on the outside of the gallery, and now we're going to go inside and take a look at my show with Dad. Hi, we're here at the Mary Anderson Center at Mount St. Francis in Indiana, right across from Louisville. It's not very far at all. Beautiful little gallery, and it's a real pleasure for me to be showing some of my recent paintings along with some of the artwork of my father, Hagan McGee. Dad passed away in 2017, and for the last 25 years of his life, he painted perhaps about 1,000 paintings similar to this one. They were all of his growing up in the hills of Kentucky down past Bardstown, kind of really hillbillies almost, and they're always happy, beautiful skies, and they show his dream world when he was a child. Here's another example of, there's actually 9 works of Dad's in the show. When he passed, he left us hundreds of paintings. He only began his career when he retired as being a maintenance man at a Catholic high school in Louisville at age 65. And he had a blast spending hours each day down in his basement studio painting these paintings that just came out of his mind. Here you have a young boy, he's out there working the field. He's got his dogs. Again, his wonderful blue skies and clouds. When I picked out the 9 paintings from Dad's collection, I was looking at trees because I knew I had picked that as a sort of a theme. And this one pretty much shows trees being harvested, which was a common part of American life, still is, I guess. But this one shows a crew pulling out logs from a forest. Whether Dad saw these things actually, I'm not sure. Mom collected history magazines of old-time Kentucky, so sometimes he would use those to kind of get him going. But he probably painted this painting in one day. I love this one. Dad had a real affinity to chickens and all animals, actually. His family had a working farm. They were very poor. It was not good country for farming, but they always had chickens and roosters. Dad quite often would put 2 birds in each painting, 2 cardinals that represented him and Mom. Mom was a big part of his art career. She would help him come up with ideas of what to paint, and he always showed his paintings to her to see what she thought of them. This is a cool one. I don't know if Dad ever saw this U.S. mail rider, but this was how mail was delivered in the hills where he came from. It was very rural. There were no roads getting down into there. It was really a very isolated part of Kentucky. In fact, his father was a moonshiner at one time. It was just very hard to have a way to feed your family by the farming, so a lot of the guys did that. But here's the U.S. mail delivery. It has to go, rain or shine. Oh, there's the 2 cardinals for Mom and Dad. This painting shows the best of all the works that are in this grouping of what his little town of Manton looked like. It's Manton, Kentucky, and it's just a little teeny place, hardly any buildings at all. There is a nice church there, and there was a general store for a long time. But they were knobs, which are small hills. And in fact, Mount St. Francis, where we are now, are in the New Albany knobs of Indiana, very similar to where he came from. Dad always worked farm animals into his paintings. They had cows, they had horses, they had chickens, goats, sheep, and I think this one's cool. It's the cows under the tree after a storm has passed. I just love his skies. Dad was totally untrained. He had no art training at all. Even though I went and got a degree from U of L in art, and he watched me. He never painted for many, many years after I was working away on my art. He came to the shows and he didn't usually say very much. And my gosh, he did really well in his last 25 years of selling a lot of art, which of course made him very happy. This is a good one. You have the fox who's coming after the chickens, and the guard dogs are telling the fox to stay away. Dad had a really kind of playful mind when he would do his art. He would just sit there and entertain himself. Again, he probably painted this painting in one day. He literally got a tube of paint and got his brush and just touched it to the top of the tube and went right to the canvas. He never mixed on a palette. I love this little piece. It's a milk cow out there on the hill. Dad loved his hills. They moved into Louisville when he was about 12. His father had to come to find work, and Dad cried. He hated leaving there. And we always went back there. My brothers, my 3 brothers and I, and sometimes my 2 sisters, we went fishing, and we always climbed up on top of the hills so Dad could have his views. And now we're going to take a look at my works in the exhibit. I have 9 works just like Dad, and I had been doing a tree series over the last year or so, and before I knew about this exhibit even, and I decided to show these trees of mine along with examples of Dad's. Dad taught all of his children how to draw trees. These are all just from my mind. I don't paint from looking at anything. And I've been using palette knives, and you can put on big globs of paint really quickly. There are 3 little small ones in the exhibit, and they're kind of a set if you want to think about them in that way. And again, I'm just thinking about how light plays on trees' shadows, and I'm also interested in what is beyond the trees. I'm not drawing the tops of trees, I'm just mostly using the trunks to divide the canvas. Here's another of the little small ones, and you really can get a sense of using the palette knife I had a large palette knife, so I put a bunch of, this is acrylic paint, all these are acrylic, put a whole bunch of it onto my table. I get the knife and I scoop it up, and it's almost like putting on drywall mud, honestly, and then you can scrape it back off. This is the 3rd of the set. When you put them all together, they sort of make sense. This one, I've used a brush to go back in and make this paint kind of come to life. Very thick, the paint. I've been buying big tubes of paint and just gooshing out a whole bunch. These happen really quickly, probably a half hour for each one. For the longest time when I was doing my art, I never had enough money to buy a whole lot of different colors, and I was using house paints and whatever I could find for free almost. And I was always envious of my dad because he was buying all these really cool colors and making such bright works. So in the last couple of years, I've been able to purchase paint more freely, and I'm really enjoying using color much more. This painting, to me, what interests me is what is behind the trees. If you could somehow walk to this hill and then look over and see what you might find. This is the largest of mine in the exhibit. Actually, I had about 30 works, and some of them are quite large, up as much as 4 feet by 6 feet. But I was just trying to stay smaller here. This one, the highlight is this sort of cloud that's up there, and it's an abstract because is the cloud in front of that tree or behind the tree? Again, using palette knives along with a brush, working very quickly. This work is on panel, a wood panel, and you can really sense the palette knife, a wide palette knife. Actually, it's a drywall nut knife, that's what I've been using. And I load up different colors. I've loaded up red and go blunk, 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 blunk. And then after you're finished, you can get a dry knife and scrape off. And you have these really nice areas that come just by surprise, really. These trees don't even really have a particular type. If I look at this, I think they're beech trees, but what I was really interested in was how light and shadow played on the canvas. Again, this happens very quickly, and if I don't like something the next day, I'll just work right over top of it. This painting reminds me of driving into Dad's little town of Manton, Kentucky. We went there so many times when we were kids with him, and these wonderful tree-covered knobs, trees everywhere, and great fishing in a river. It was just a great place to grow up. I wish Dad could have seen this one. He would know exactly where it is out there. My brother David, David's number 4. I was son number 3. There were 4 boys and then 2 girls. 6 of us. Our great mom, Grace, she was a sweetheart, and Dad was her lifelong love. They both lived to almost 90. Here's Dad in the Navy. He joined when he was very young, not even of age. He was right at the end of World War II. This is an interesting picture for me, and I hadn't seen it until not so many years ago. Here's Dad as a child. I think that's one of his cousins, and this is his grandfather. And that you can see it was rough land, and his grandfather actually taught my dad how to draw by scratching on flat rocks they found out on the farm. Here we are, all of my siblings. This is in the 1970s probably. We were very proud of our parents. And here's Mom and Dad. They both spent the last few years in a nursing home together, and all of us again. This was about a year before Dad died in 2017. This picture is my daughter and myself and Dad. We had a show at Spalding University, the 3 of us. Tasha has a degree in fiber arts. My parents were sweethearts. They just adored each other. Here they are swimming out at Manton. Mom was from Louisville. She didn't want to move out there. She didn't want to be a farm girl. Here they are at the end of their lives, and you can see how much they loved each other. We had a show at Bellarmine University where all of my siblings, my parents, and my siblings' children, we all showed together art, because we all kind of took to art coming from my dad. He just kind of taught us that if you were bored, you could draw and entertain yourself. Dad was a country boy. He only went to the 7th grade, and here he was becoming an artist in his retirement years. And not only was he an artist, but he was being collected and getting a lot of press in the Courier Journal, and even did some TV spots. He got a big kick out of being a celebrity. Thanks for taking a look at Dad and my work. If you get a chance, come up here, even if not for the show. It's a wonderful place to hike. Back behind, there's a huge lake. And there's one trail that takes about an hour to get around, but it's just gorgeous up here. Mount St. Francis, Indiana, the Mary Anderson Center. Thank you.